This is Community Radio Networks. Let's get this week started. It is the 13th of May today. And we have now here all the information that you need to take on this day as well as the entire week. And we'll start with the world news coming up first. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news read by Shabnam Madgil. Israeli forces continue to conduct airstrikes on Gaza after it expanded an evacuation order for Rafah, with the UN warning an outright invasion of the crowded southern city risked an epic disaster. Gaza Civil Defense Agency said the 2 doctors were also killed in the central town of Deir al-Balah amid heavy gunfire from Israeli helicopters. Israeli forces have pushed deep into the ruins of Gaza's northern edge to recapture an area where they had claimed to have defeated Hamas months ago, while at the opposite end of the enclave, tanks and troops pushed across a highway into Rafah, with some of the most intense fighting for weeks now taking place on both the northern and southern edges of Gaza. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have again taken flight, and aid groups warn that a humanitarian crisis could sharply worsen. Israel sent tanks into the eastern Jabalia in the northern Gaza Strip after a night of heavy aerial and ground bombardments, killing 19 people and wounding dozens of others. The death toll in Israel's military operation in Gaza has now passed at least 35,000 Palestinians. Israeli tanks under cover from heavy fire from air and ground have pushed further into Jabalia in the northern Gaza Strip this morning. Israel's defense minister says the military offensive in Gaza will continue until the captives are freed and the rule of Hamas and its military capabilities are dismantled. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees says nearly 360,000 people have now fled Gaza's Rafah since Israel issued evacuation orders on the 6th of this month. The Israeli military says it opened the western Erez crossing into northern Gaza to facilitate the entry of humanitarian aid in accordance with the directive of the government of Israel and in coordination with the U.S. government. The health ministry in Gaza has said that the besieged Palestinian territory's health system is hours away from collapse after fighting has blocked fuel shipments through key crossings. The UN General Assembly on Friday overwhelmingly backed a Palestinian bid to become a full UN member by recognizing it as qualified to join and recommending the UN Security Council reconsider the matter favorably. In the vote by the 193-member General Assembly was a global survey of support for the Palestinian bid to become a full UN member, a move that would effectively recognize a Palestinian state after the US vetoed it in the UN Security Council last month. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is making late German dictator Adolf Hitler jealous with his methods of genocide in Gaza. Egypt announced it would back South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice in a sign of Cairo's frustration over an Israeli military operation in Gaza's southern city of Rafah that borders Egypt. And a delegation of senior members of the U.S. Congress has held a meeting with Qatari representatives in Doha. The Islamic resistance movement slammed President Biden after he said that a ceasefire in Gaza is contingent upon Hamas releasing the detainees in that strip. Dismayed Hamas condemns the statement and said that remark is a retreat from the results of the last round of negotiations which led to the movement's agreement to the proposal submitted by the mediators in Egypt and Qatar. An all-out Israeli offensive in the Gaza city of Rafah would provoke anarchy without eliminating Hamas, according to U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, as Washington stepped up a pressure campaign against such an assault. And separately, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan emphasized Washington's concerns about an offensive in a call with his Israeli counterpart. Secretary of State Antony Blinken delivered some of the Biden administration's strongest public criticism yet of Israel's conduct of the war in Gaza, saying Israeli tactics have meant a horrible loss of life of innocent civilians, but failed to neutralize Hamas leaders and fighters that could drive a lasting insurgency. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan maintaining that President Biden's threat to withhold offensive weapons from Israel does not mean that the U.S. intends to abandon the country. A tiny contingent of Duke University graduates opposed pro-Israel comedian Jerry Seinfeld speaking at their commencement in North Carolina yesterday, with about 30 of the 7,000 students leaving their seats and chanting "Free Palestine" amid a mix of boos and chairs. Some waved the red, green, black and white Palestinian flag, and Seinfeld, whose namesake sitcom was one of the most popular in U.S. television history, was there to receive an honorary doctorate from the university. He was met with this wave of boos yesterday when students at the Duke University in North Carolina walked out just before his commencement speech, the latest in a wave of anti-war protests at college graduations across the country this weekend. And not only was he delivering the speech at the school's football stadium, also receiving this honorary degree from the school where his son is enrolled and from which his daughter graduated. Democratic Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey faces a second distinct bribery and corruption trial in 7 years starting this morning. And this new case is a complicated affair involving multiple gold bars, envelopes of cash, a Mercedes, and a lot more. That prosecutors say the powerful former chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and his new wife obtained in exchange for helping a halal meat monopoly, granting favors for people from Egypt and Qatar, and trying to influence a New Jersey prosecution. He has until June to announce if he's running for re-election and has pleaded not guilty and denied all of the charges. The star prosecution witness in Donald Trump's hush money trial is set to take the stand. As a matter of fact, he has just taken the stand with testimony that could help shape the outcome of the first criminal case against an American president. Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer and personal fixer, is by far the Manhattan District Attorney's most important witness in this case, and his expected appearance today signals that the trial is entering its final stretch. Prosecutors say they may wrap up their presentation of evidence by the end of the week. Donald Trump's estranged former fixer, Michael Cohen, expected to give testimony today that could determine whether jurors convict the former president of illegally hiding a payment to silence a porn star who said they had a sexual encounter. The former President Trump's one-time personal lawyer taking the stand as we speak in the Manhattan hush money case against Trump. And for nearly a decade, he was his trusted advisor, personal attorney, and self-described attack dog with a law license. But this morning, he's set to serve as a star witness in this criminal hush money trial, potentially delivering testimony that could cement the Manhattan District Attorney's case and send Cohen's former boss to prison. According to prosecutors, he was in the room when Trump and former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker agreed to a catch-and-kill scheme to illegally hide negative information about Trump from 2016 voters. Coordinated with Pecker to kill two stories about Trump, and himself made a $130,000 payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. Senate Republicans see some warning signs flashing after an embarrassing week for former President Trump, despite his strong poll numbers in battleground states against President Trump. Some Republican lawmakers think that he needs to step up his appeals to disaffected GOP voters, especially women, after Nikki Haley won 128,000 votes to solidly Republican Indiana, despite ending her presidential campaign in early March. And angered by his criminal indictments, the former president declared during a campaign rally that the gloves were off and promised a brutal election against President Biden, one centered on rooting out what he called America's enemies from within. Another sign the election is on a dark path, even as he was often lighthearted during a nearly 90-minute speech to a raucous Wildwood, New Jersey crowd numbering in the tens of thousands. He boasted about drawing bigger crowds than Bruce Springsteen, a favored son of the state, and claimed he will win New Jersey despite it going for Biden by 6 points in 2020, and joked about eating a hot dog because it's among the foods least affected by inflation. Former President Trump raised eyebrows among his no-nonsense New Jersey crowd at this rally, where he recited a 1963 soul song in its entirety and referenced a fictional cannibal as great in a meandering recitation of The Snake. During this 90-minute speech, he used the Oscar Brown song to draw a parallel with illegal immigration and how stupid it is what we're doing right now, he said. Mere days after Barron Trump was set to be the Republican RNC delegate and make his solo political appearance, he's backed out. Right when people thought he was following in his father, former U.S. President Trump, his mother, Melania Trump, confirmed that he is not stepping into politics just yet. President Biden's campaign plans to host a major fundraiser in Los Angeles next month with former President Barack Obama and Hollywood superstars George Clooney and Julia Roberts. The star-studded lineup is expected to boost Biden's fundraising efforts at a time when Donald Trump and the Republican National Committee are aiming to close the cash gap now that the former president has won the delegates needed to secure the nomination, allowing him to use all the GOP tools at his disposal. The first patient to receive a genetically modified pig kidney transplant has died 2 months after the procedure. Mass General is deeply saddened at the sudden passing of Dr. Rick Slayman, or Mr. Rick Slayman, and we have no indication that it was the result of his recent transplant, according to the Boston Hospital. An extreme G5 geomagnetic storm reached Earth last night. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, this G5 storm is the strongest to hit Earth since October of 2003 and triggered the Aurora Borealis, commonly known as the Northern Lights, in many parts of the U.S. and around the world. Geomagnetic conditions did persist through the weekend and potentially disrupt some telecommunication and power grids. Since Friday night, this geomagnetic storm has been hitting Earth, offering many a chance to see the Northern Lights or the Aurora Borealis across the country. And people across Texas got to see a display that's usually only visible close to the North or South Pole. The Aurora Borealis appeared in the sky in several parts of Texas. Governor Greg Abbott says Texas will not support a plan by the Department of Homeland Security to change how migrants seeking asylum are processed. The agency announced the plan, saying they would enhance security and streamline asylum processing. Russian attacks in northeast Ukraine have prompted the evacuation of almost 1,800 people from the Kharkiv regional. Heavy fighting has continued in the border area following Russia's surprise incursions. And Kyiv has been expecting a Russian summer offensive for some time, including a possible attempt to capture Kharkiv, Ukraine's second city. But Ukraine insists its forces are able to resist any attack. Thousands of residents of the eastern Ukrainian border region of Kharkiv being evacuated to safety amid Russia's current offensive operations. Around 4,000 people had already left the area in the last 2 days. And Russian forces have made 2 cross-border assaults inside northern Ukraine in what President Zelensky is calling a new wave of counter-offensive actions by Russia. At least 7 people were killed and 17 injured when a whole section of an apartment building in Belgorod has collapsed after being hit by a missile fired by Ukraine. And this was one of the deadliest attacks to date on the region of Belgorod, where Ukraine launched what Russian officials said was a massive missile attack with the Tochka ballistic missiles and Adler and RM-70 Vampire multiple launch rocket systems. Russian President Putin has proposed a surprise new defense minister, nominating civilian Andrei Belousov, a former deputy prime minister who specializes in economics, for the job more than 2 years into the Ukraine war. He wants Sergei Shoigu, defense minister since 2012 and a long-standing ally, to become the secretary of Russia's powerful Security Council, replacing incumbent Nikolai Patrushev, and to also have responsibilities for the military-industrial complex. He replaced Sergei Shoigu as defense minister in this cabinet shakeup that comes as he begins his 5th term in office. Spain's socialists won the biggest share of the vote in yesterday's Catalan elections, marking a significant setback for the long-standing separatist leadership and their aspirations for independence. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has hailed the victory of the regional offshoot of his national Spanish Socialist Workers' Party in the parliamentary elections in the region of Catalonia. And German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is due to travel to Sweden today to hold talks with the Prime Ministers of Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and Norway. And the main topics of discussion are expected to be the security situation in Europe, support for Ukraine in its defense against Russia, but also so-called hybrid threats such as cyber attacks and sabotage. A major fire broke out in a vast shopping complex in the Polish capital of Warsaw that housed some 1,400 shops and service outlets, and where many of the vendors were from Vietnam. Huge plumes of black smoke could be seen rising over that vast area, and the fire department said more than 80% of the Marewilska 44 shopping complex burned in Warsaw. Switzerland's Nemo won the 68th annual Eurovision Song Contest this weekend, the first win for the country since Celine Dion in 1988, and the first contest winner to identify as non-binary, the subject of the winning song. The contest is the world's single most watched televised live music event, attracting more than 160 million viewers globally. And Nemo beat Croatia's Baby Lasagna, whose song about emigration placed first in the public vote, but 8th with juries of music industry professionals. The German government's anti-Semitism commissioner Felix Klein has condemned the protest against Israel's participation in the final of this Eurovision Song Contest this weekend. Nigeria's fashion and traditional dances were at full display yesterday as Prince Harry and Meghan arrived in its largest city of Lagos as part of their 3-day visit to the country to promote mental health for soldiers and empower young people. Rescue teams in South Africa forged ahead with efforts this morning to find any survivors still trapped under the rubble a week after an apartment building that was under construction collapsed. Their hopes were boosted over the weekend when one of the construction workers was found alive after 6 days without food and water. Fires resulting from the fighting in Sudan have destroyed or damaged 72 villages and settlements last month, highlighting the use of fire as a weapon of war in the conflict in the African country. And after the head of the UN Atomic Watchdog Agency warned that Iran has enough uranium to produce several nuclear bombs, a firebrand Iranian lawmaker declared that the Islamic Republic of Iran possesses atomic weapons. River levels rose again yesterday as strong rains lashed waterlogged southern Brazil, where flooding has killed 145 people and forced hundreds of thousands from their homes. And hundreds of people fear dead after flash flooding hit northern Afghanistan, with warnings the toll could rise after further storms across the region. Taliban officials say at least 150 have been killed, while the World Food Programme says more than 300 have died after heavy rainfall hit 5 districts in the Baghlan province. At least 34 people killed and 16 more missing in western Indonesia after flash floods and cold lava flow from one of the archipelago's most active volcanoes damaged homes, roads and mosques. Mount Ibu, a volcano in Indonesia's North Maluku province, erupted this morning, spewing thick grey ash and dark clouds 5,000 meters into the sky for 5 minutes. And rescuers recovered more bodies today after monsoon rains triggered flash floods on Indonesia's Sumatra island, bringing down torrents of cold lava and mud, leaving 43 people dead and another 15 missing. And the visit between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Hungarian President Viktor Orban ended with glowing praise from both parties as Xi labeled his counterpart a model for diplomatic relations with Europe, while Orban endorsed Beijing's Ukraine peace plan. The United States and China will hold their first talks on artificial intelligence tomorrow, with Washington set to raise concerns about Beijing's use of the fast-emerging technology. The inaugural dialogue, announced without a date during Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit last month to Beijing, will take place in Geneva, involving senior officials. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the world news on community radio networks, and a fourth Indian national living in Canada has been charged in the slaying of a Sikh separatist leader last June that became the center of a diplomatic spat with India. British Columbia's Integrated Homicide Investigation Team said in a release that 22-year-old Amandeep Singh was already in the custody of Peel Regional Police in Ontario for unrelated firearms charges. Earlier this month, police arrested 3 Indian nationals, Karan Barar, Kamalpreet Singh and Karanpreet Singh, in Edmonton and charged them with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was gunned down in the parking lot of the Surrey, British Columbia Sikh temple where he was president. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar in New Delhi today said that India has not received any information that is specific and worthy of investigation by its probe agencies regarding this fourth arrest made by Canada in connection with the killing of Khalistan separatist and designated terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. The Indian government has extended budget support to the Maldives with the rollover of a $50 million treasury bill for an additional year. And India extends this vital budgetary support at a request made by the Maldives Foreign Minister Musa Zamir to India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar during the official bilateral visit to India from the 8th to the 10th of May. A wave of panic swept through cities as bomb threats targeted schools, hospitals, railways and airports. However, it soon became apparent that these threats were nothing but a hoax, leaving authorities wondering what happened. The total voting turnout stood at 52.6% till 3 p.m. today, as Bengal leads with 66% voter turnout and only 30% in Jammu and Kashmir. Voting for the fourth phase of the Lok Sabha elections underway in 96 parliamentary constituencies across 9 states and 1 union territory today. All 175 seats of the State Legislative Assembly of Andhra Pradesh and 28 seats of the State Legislative Assembly of Odisha are also witnessing the polling today. And Prime Minister Modi held road shows in Varanasi a day before nominations. A wave of demonstrations swept through at least 5 places across Andhra Pradesh, with many people demanding money from political parties in exchange for votes. The issue is not new in the state, but as inflation rises, so does the price of the votes. More than 9,600 children were wrongly incarcerated in adult prisons across India between 2016 and 2021. This according to a new study, incarceration of children in prisons in India obtained under the Rights to Information Act. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal today lauded the state government-run schools for outshining their previous year CBSE Class 12th results and securing a pass percentage of 96.99% this year as compared to 91.59% recorded last year. Maharashtra saw dust storm and rain showers this evening after initial dust storm raining was reported in Thane and Navi Mumbai, and dust storms occurred near Mantralaya. Shubman Gill's return to form will provide a big boost to Gujarat Titans as they square off against table toppers the Kolkata Knight Riders in their must-win IPL game today. Royal Challengers Bengaluru convincing 47-run win over the Delhi Capitals yesterday not only kept them alive in the race to playoffs but also set a record for most consecutive victories by a team in the 2024 edition of the IPL. Royal Challengers Bengaluru registered their 5th straight win to improve their IPL playoff hopes with a 47-run thrashing of the Delhi Capitals yesterday. And when the beleaguered Lucknow Super Giants play the similarly desperate Delhi Capitals in a crucial game tomorrow in New Delhi, all eyes will be on Captain KL Rahul as they try to hang on to their narrow hopes of making the IPL playoffs. Sikandar Raza and Brian Bennett hit half-centuries as Zimbabwe secured an 8-wicket consolation victory over Bangladesh in the final 2020 international in Dhaka yesterday to avoid a 5-0 whitewash. Belligerent half-centuries by Fakhar Zaman and Mohammad Rizwan steered Pakistan to a series-levelling 7-wicket victory over Ireland in the second T20 international at Dublin. And the Pakistan hockey team was given a hero's welcome on their arrival in Lahore yesterday following their silver medal finish at the Sultan Azlan Shah Cup, where they narrowly lost in the final to a defensively stoic Japanese side on penalties. Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar arrived in Beijing to co-chair the 5th Pakistan-China Foreign Minister Strategic Dialogue, and upon his arrival he was received by Ambassador Wang Fu Kang and Pakistan's envoy to China, Dr. Khalil Hashmi. The foreign minister will co-chair the strategic dialogue with his Chinese counterpart, covering the full spectrum of Pakistan-China relations. And the MQM Pakistan elected Dr. Khalid Maqbool Siddiqui as the party chairman in what some disgruntled leaders described as an act of sheer violation of the MQMP constitution. An MQMP spokesperson said in a brief statement that a meeting of the party's Central Committee unanimously elected former convener Dr. Siddiqui as the chairman of the MQM Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you, but I do have your financial news coming up in a separate segment in just a minute. I will be right back. All right, let's get you today's financial news. U.S. equity futures have gained as investors awaited data due later this week on price pressures in the economy for clues on the Federal Reserve's policy path. Contracts on the S&P 500 rose about 0.2% after the index posted a third straight week of gains. And contracts on the Nasdaq 100 climbed 0.3%. Google parent Alphabet Inc. dropped 1.7% in pre-market trading this morning after Bloomberg reported that Apple Inc. is closing in on agreement with OpenAI to use the startup's artificial intelligence technology on the iPhone. Apple shares have climbed 1.5%. Stocks rallied during a quiet week last week for economic data on Wall Street, and in the entire week, the Nasdaq Composite rose just under 1%, while the S&P 500 popped almost 2%, and ended Friday back above 5,200 for the first time since early April. Meanwhile, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose more than 2% on the week and has closed higher for 8 straight sessions. A federal judge in Fort Worth blocked a new Biden administration rule that would prohibit credit card companies from charging customers late fees higher than $8. And President Biden's surrogates will crisscross the country this week, talking up the hundreds of billions he's pumping into projects such as roads, clean energy, drinking water, and broadband, an effort designed to draw a sharp contrast with his predecessor's series of ineffectual infrastructure weeks. The White House hopes the message will help convince Americans that Biden's programs are improving their lives just months before they head to the voting booth. And former President Trump could owe more than $100 million in taxes as a result of a years-long IRS inquiry into claims of huge losses on his Chicago skyscraper. The news organizations reported Trump claimed massive financial losses twice. First on his 2008 tax return, when he said the building then mired in debt was worthless, and again after 2010 when he had shifted its ownership into a new partnership also controlled by Trump. The IRS, meanwhile, says 1 million people could be leaving money on the table, and there's only 1 week left to claim your piece of that $1 billion pie. The deadline to receive a tax return for 2020 is coming up, and the IRS estimates 1 million people who didn't file yet may be eligible for a refund. U.S. stocks edged up before the bell today, ready to build on a string of gains as attention turned to the coming inflation report, seen as a potential starting gun for interest rate cuts. North America's largest companies are on track to post their best quarterly earnings relative to expectations in at least 2 years, as they've worked to keep costs down over fears of a recession. The 459 companies in the S&P 500 that have reported this quarter have posted profits on average 8.4% higher than expected. Shares of GameStop jumped 40% in pre-market trading this morning after social media persona Roaring Kitty, whose online posts had sparked a trading frenzy in the video game retailer in 2021, returned on X.com after 3 years. Shares of GameStop surging today. And Tylenol maker Kenvue has said that Johnson & Johnson will sell its remaining 9.5% stake in the company a year after the healthcare conglomerate spun off and listed its consumer health business. Artificial intelligence giant OpenAI expected to reveal a major product update today, which reports suggest may be a search engine positioned to compete with rival Google. The company has made numerous moves suggesting the launch of a search product, through CEO Sam Altman denying it would be announced today, alluding to a separate unspecified project. AI can now decode your brain activity, a fancy way of saying mind reading. Big tech companies like Meta are backing research into this field, including products that can decode thoughts without requiring surgery. Featuring an array of fantastical beings such as mud people and giant grandmothers, an AI film festival is giving the glimpse of the storytelling that is made possible by this novel technology. Nearly 3,000 short films were submitted to the festival, organized by Runway AI, one of the leading startups in the field of AI-powered video generation, and the 10 films selected put the filmmakers' vivid imaginations on display, with their stories set in aesthetically stunning universes. Movie making and animation having grown by leaps and bounds in the last 50 years. Primates ruled over the North American box office as Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes collected $56.5 million in its first weekend of release, and those ticket sales were a hair above the early projections of 50 million to 55 million and were easily enough to tower over the non-existent competition. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes opened roughly even with two of the three prior installments in the rebooted franchise, landing behind only 2014's Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, a series best $72 million, and ahead of 2017's War of the Planet of the Apes and 2011's Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Taylor Swift's latest album, The Tortured Poets Department, continues its reign at the top of the Billboard 200 chart for the third consecutive week, and this achievement marks her first album since 2020's Folklore to spend its initial 3 weeks at number one, adding to her impressive record of 6 number one albums. Notably, The Tortured Poets Department is the first album to maintain this position for its 3 weeks since Travis Scott's Utopia did last summer. Neurotechnology using artificial intelligence is opening up new possibilities in healthcare that previously did not exist. And Neuralink, a company owned by Elon Musk that produces implants intended to help patients with conditions such as quadriplegia, made a big step forward this year but also hit a small setback. The company took that big step in January with the successful surgery to implant a Neuralink brain-computer interface chip into the first patient in the PRIME study, and went so well that Nolan Arbog of Phoenix, Arizona, was able to go home the following day. However, the company noted in a post that not everything has gone as planned in the weeks following the operation. His implant included 1,024 electrodes across 64 highly flexible ultra-thin threads and are key to minimize damage during implantation and beyond, and some of them didn't stay in place. Amazon's self-driving robotaxi unit is being investigated by the U.S. government's Highway Safety Agency after 2 of its vehicles braked suddenly and were rear-ended by motorcyclists. A Delta Airlines passenger is suing the carrier for $1 million, alleging that he broke a rib when an armrest collapsed, and he was about to fly from San Diego to Seattle back in 2022 when the incident is said to have occurred. Renting a car is rarely a smooth process. There are always at least 1 or 2 headaches involved, and recently a Tesla Model 3 that was returned to Hertz after a weekend trip to Los Angeles and received an additional charge of $277.39 on top of the initial reservation price. And the reason for that was that the customer didn't return the Tesla with a full tank of gas. He even paid for the skip the pump and save time option, meaning that even if he rented a gas-powered car and didn't refuel it, he wouldn't have been charged an additional fee. He returned the Tesla with a 96% charge, which is what the car was charged to when he rented it. Target has announced that it will only sell their Pride Month collection in select stores after suffering a backlash and boycott last year during the 2023 Pride season. And the company says that instead of offering their Pride Month collection merchandise across all stores, they will be offering a collection of products including adult apparel and home and food and beverage items curated based on consumer feedback. Target has announced it will only sell their Pride Month collection in select stores. In the realm of pizza, there are a myriad of topping choices to satisfy every palate, and while many opt for that classic pepperoni, mushrooms, or olives, some take a sweet yet spicy route. Hot honey has made a splash in the pizza world, and now its popularity is surging, extending beyond pizza to adorn coffee, chicken nuggets, chips, and even ice cream, captivating taste buds around the globe. Google searches, in fact, have increased tenfold in the past 10 years. Peaking in February, it has gone from a cult classic to a mainstream condiment, and that is hot honey. Employees at an Apple store in a Baltimore suburb voted to authorize a strike, setting up what could be the first work stoppage at any Apple retail store in the country. The group of about 100 employees organized under the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers Coalition of Organized Retail Employees, and the location was the first Apple store to form a union in 2022 of over 270 retail locations nationwide. Burnett Plaza, the tallest tallest building in Fort Worth, Texas, has been purchased via foreclosure auction for $12.3 million, just 3 years after it was sold for more than $137.5 million. The 40-story behemoth was sought back by Pinnacle Bank, Texas, in the auction held on the steps of the Tarrant County Courthouse. And Pinnacle had claimed in public filings that the tower's former owner, Burnett Cherry Street LLC, an affiliate of New York-based Opal Holdings LLC, defaulted on a $13 million loan used to purchase the building in 2021. As well as being the tallest in Fort Worth, Burnett Plaza is also considered the largest, with over 1 million square feet of commercial office and retail space. Constructed in 1983, this distinctive block-sized complex stands at 567 feet tall at 801 Cherry Street and is surrounded by a public urban park. It was most recently appraised for $104.5 million by the Tarrant Appraisal District. And tenants include General Motors Financial, Kimley Horn and Associates, Huckabee, as well as Fries and Nichols. A tiny, low-priced electric car called the Seagull has American automakers and politicians trembling. The car, launched last year by Chinese automaker BYD, sells for around $12,000 in China, but drives well and is put together after craftsmanship that rivals U.S. electric vehicles that cost 3 times as much, and a shorter-range version costs under $10,000. Tariffs on imported Chinese vehicles will keep the Seagull out of America for now, and it likely would sell for more than $12,000 if imported. Novavax said it has signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with French drug maker Sanofi to co-commercialize the company's COVID vaccine starting next year and develop combination shots targeting the coronavirus and the flu, among other efforts. Shares of Novavax closed nearly 100% higher from the previous day close on Friday, which was $4.47 apiece. Microsoft announced 4 billion euros in investment for developing data centers in France, joining fellow U.S. giant Amazon in committing to the country's tech infrastructure. And the announcement came on the eve of the 7th Choose France Summit, the aim of which is to attract foreign investors to the country. And President Macron will host it at the Chateau of Versailles near Paris. The German digital association Bitkom says it has recorded an increased number of cyber attacks from China and Russia over the past 12 months. There was also a 50% increase in the number of known incidents from China. Of the companies affected, 80% were targeted by Russian attacks. Data available with the Commerce Ministry also showed that China pipped the U.S. to emerge as India's largest trading partner during the last financial year. India's trade with the U.S. was estimated at $118.3 billion compared to $118.4 billion with China. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the financial news right here on Community Radio Networks. And Apple iPhone exports have surged. Apple's fiscal year 2025 has begun with this remarkable surge in India as the country's iPhone exports nearly doubled last month, reaching $1.1 billion compared to $580 million in the previous year. Bharti Airtel and Google Cloud have announced that they have entered into a long-term collaboration to deliver cloud solutions to Indian businesses, and the collaboration will offer a suite of cloud solutions from Google Cloud to fast-track cloud adoption and modernization of Airtel's customers. Noida International Airport has awarded the concession for retail and duty-free to a consortium of Heinemann Asia Pacific and BWC Forwarders Private Limited, and this includes the concession for duty-free to be operated by Heinemann, as well as master concessions for domestic retail and international duty-paid retail to be operated by BWC Forwarders. India's wealthiest investors have lost money despite the Nifty's 3% gain in the March quarter. 7 of India's top 10 wealthiest individual investors experienced a decrease in their wealth. The Jhunjhunwala family's wealth, though, is listed firm surpassing 50,000 crore rupees for the first time during this period, and approximately 17 other individuals held portfolios valued at over 1,000 crore rupees. Ramdev Agarwal, the chairman of the Motilal Oswal Group, is of the view that India will give birth to many J.P. Morgans, Morgan Stanleys, Merrill Lynches in the coming years. And it is the BSE Sensex ending the day at 72,776, up 112 points, or 0.15%. Public sector lender State Bank of India today announced it has become the first trading clearing member at the India International Bullion Exchange, the country's first bullion exchange in GIFT City of Gandhinagar. In the upcoming fiscal year 2025, State Bank of India is aiming to bring on board around 12,000 fresh faces. And according to the SBI chairman Dinesh Khara, 85% of the 12,000 new recruits expected to join the bank are engineering graduates. KPI Green Energy today said its board has approved a proposal to raise up to 1,000 crore rupees through issuance of shares via qualified institutional placement. An online food delivery platform Zomato has reported a consolidated net profit of 175 crore rupees for the fourth quarter of the financial year 23-24. Directed by Ali Abbas Zafar and starring Akshay Kumar, Tiger Shroff and Prithviraj Sukumar, and Bade Miyan Chote Miyan has been struggling at the box office given the huge budget it was mounted on. The film has managed to earn some money at the box office, which would go a big way in reducing the losses. It crossed the 65 crore rupee mark over its fifth weekend, but the 100 crore mark seems difficult. India's Chabahar Port Pact to counter Pakistan, where China and India have signed an agreement with Iran for the management of the Chabahar port for the next decade. And this move, taking place amidst a busy election season, is seen as a significant geopolitical outreach to Iran with major regional implications. The International Monetary Fund has not asked Pakistan to hike up energy prices, but does want it to withdraw subsidies granted in various sectors. IMF official Esther Perez Ruiz said that a delegation from the lender will meet Pakistani authorities next week to discuss the next phase of engagement. And as affordable power supplies affect demand and push consumers out of the national grid, question marks are being raised over the procurement of imported coal for power plants in the long term, despite the government's and the International Monetary Fund's overall policy direction for localization and import substitution. Bullish momentum continued at the Pakistan Stock Exchange today as shares gained more than 700 points. And the investment decisions of Pakistan's private sector, led by a few large family-owned business groups, are influenced by a myriad of factors. While the interest rate may be a consideration, historical evidence suggests it's not necessarily the key determinant shaping investment trajectories in the country. All other factors are excluded to gain a better insight into the relationship between the interest rate as well as investment. Sindh the Chief Minister Murad Ali Shah has ruled out any change in the National Finance Commission award, saying neither the federal government nor any other official has discussed any amendment, and made these remarks while talking to reporters at the Hyderabad Press Club yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you, and I do have the final segment of our program today coming up in just a minute. Stay with me.
जरा सी दिल में दे जगह तू, जरा सा अपना ले बना, जरा सा ख्वाबों में सजा तू, जरा सा यादों में बसा.
Let's get you now the final segment of our program today. And today is a Monday, the 13th of May, as we get this week started for you. I have huge thanks going out to Discount Power for their support of community radio networks. Also, big thanks going out to Houston EB5 and to the Aluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force in South Lake, KinzerLaw.com, Maikalachi, the Ruchi Palace at Maikalachi, Sri Vimal, Vimal's Venue, Mystic Mandala, as well as Eggholic on MacArthur Boulevard in Irving, and Flash Brush Productions. Huge thanks going out to all our supporters of community radio networks. And we do have the Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific eyeliner, and that is the celebration that is going to be happening from 2 to 9 on the 18th of this month, this week actually, from 2 to 9. We also have the Janoon show happening in Dallas on the 19th of May. That is this coming Sunday at the Raleigh Underground. And for more information, you can call Nafiz Hussain at 561-452-6119. 7 o'clock onwards at the Raleigh Underground in Irving is the group called Janoon performing. The U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce next week is having their AICon 2024 on the 23rd from 9:30 to 2:30 at the Renaissance Hotel in Addison. The morning keynote speaker is Chakri Gautamakulla, the CEO and co-founder of O9 Solutions, and the afternoon keynote is George Baker Sr., the founder and chairman of Park Hub. And there will be a CIO panel and an AI panel also. This event is taking place on the 23rd next week at from 9:30 to 2:30 at the Renaissance Hotel in Addison. And you can get more information as well as register on the Chamber's website, which is usicoc.org. Hasda Punjab's Vaisakhi Mela is happening on the 25th of this month from 5 p.m. to midnight on that Saturday, and it is going to be at the Plano Event Center, inviting all of you to be there. And if you need a booth there, please call Billu Benipal at 940-391-4517. hasdapunjab.net is their website for more information. The 20th anniversary of the Taste of the Cowboys is going to be on the 7th of June at the Ford Center at the Star. And we have the South Asian Business Alliance that meets every month, and their next meeting is on the 8th of June. It is going to be at the First United Bank in McKinney at Craig Ranch, and we invite you all for that. Please get more information on the website, which is SABA, South Asian Business Alliance.com. There is going to be a BAPS Charities event happening on Saturday, the 8th of June, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning at 3111 Olympus Boulevard. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the walk run that is hosted by the BAPS Charities every year. And on Saturday, the 8th of June, they will host this annual Joy of Others walk and run to extend support to Irving Cares and Metro Care, two invaluable organizations dedicated to serving the community. And a holistic festival. It's a 2-day festival of life and wellness on Saturday and Sunday, the 8th and 9th of June at the Plano Nature and Retreat Center. This is being brought to you by Mystic Mandala. And for more information or to get booths, please call Vijay at 972-750-1419. And the website is holisticfestivaloflife.com. Badshah's Pagal Tour is happening at the Curtis Culwell Center on Friday, the 14th of June. And on the 16th of June, Shreya Ghoshal will be live at the Curtis Culwell Center. This is being brought to you by ACube Media. And tickets are available at curtisculwellcenter.com or at sulekha.com for this amazing concert. Kal Ho Na Ho on the Shankar Ehsan Loy's concert on the 29th of June at the Toyota Music Factory. And Nan's Vision is bringing a glamorous night to Dallas with Shilpa Shetty on the 29th of June. We do hope that you can attend all these concerts. The month of June, of course, is also going to be busy with the World Cup. And then we have Rohit Sharma, one of the modern greats of the game, opening his cricket academy in the Dallas-Fort Worth area this July. Sunday, the 14th of July, is the academy's grand launch. Fancy schmancy meet and greet with with Rohit Sharma, and we will get more details to you, but you can get more information at dfwindoorsports.com. The Hitman coming to Dallas here on the 14th of July. Crick Kingdom Cricket Academy by Rohit Sharma, all set to make its grand debut right here in Dallas. Now, for more information on this, you can call Shalu, and I'm going to give you Shalu's number. It's 201-245-6299. 201-245-6299. Crick Kingdom in partnership with DFW Indoor Sports Cricket Academy by Rohit Sharma. And the India Association of North Texas is proudly presenting a Carom Grant Masters tournament on 19th, 20th, and 21st of July. And you can get more information at carompl.com. We will have more information on other events coming to us, and at that time we'll make it available to you also. You can go ahead and get all that information right here on Community Radio Networks. Before I end my show for today, we do have some stories from the annals of history that we would like to bring to you that happened on the 13th of May, today's date. In the year 1846, the U.S. Congress overwhelmingly votes in favor of President James Polk's request to declare war on Mexico in a dispute over Texas. And under this threat of war, the U.S. had refrained from annexing Texas after the latter won independence from Mexico in 1836. But in 1844, President John Tyler restarted negotiations with the Republic of Texas, culminating with the Treaty of Annexation. And now this treaty was defeated by a wide margin in the Senate because it would upset the slave state, free state balance between North and South and risk war with Mexico, which had broken off relations with the U.S. But shortly before leaving office and with the support of President-elect Polk, Tyler managed to get the joint resolution passed. Texas was admitted to the Union. And while Mexico didn't follow through with its threat to declare war, relations between the two nations remained tense over border disputes. President Polk ordered troops into disputed lands that lay between the Rio Grande rivers and the Nueces River, and sent a diplomat to Mexico to seek boundary adjustments in return for the U.S. government's settlement of the claims of U.S. citizens against Mexico, and also to make an offer to purchase California and New Mexico. And after that mission failed, the U.S. Army advanced to the mouth of the Rio Grande, the river that the state of Texas claimed as its southern boundary. Mexico, claiming that the boundary was actually the other river to the northeast of the Rio Grande, considered the advance of the army an act of aggression and sent troops across the Rio Grande on today's date in 1846 and declared the Mexican advance to be an invasion of U.S. soil. It is the U.S. that asked Congress to declare war on Mexico, which it did. And after nearly 2 years of fighting, peace was established by the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and the Rio Grande was made the southern boundary of Texas, and California and New Mexico was ceded to the United States. In return, the U.S. paid Mexico the sum of $15 million and agreed to settle all claims of U.S. citizens against Mexico. And during the second week of May in 1919, the recently arrived German delegation to the Versailles Peace Conference convened in Paris after the end of First World War and pored over their copies of the Treaty of Versailles, drawn up in the months preceding by representatives of their victorious enemies. And it was on today's date, the 13th of May, that German Foreign Minister lodges their written objections to what they considered to be unfairly harsh treatment. Summing up the objections, they said that those who sign this treaty will sign the death sentence of many millions of German men, women, and children. And of course, it was that German foreign minister who resigned a few weeks to protest his government's acceptance of the peace treaty terms. And these German foreign minister protested those terms at the Versailles Treaty on today's date in 1919. And, of course, it was signed in June the next month. Meanwhile, opposition to the treaty and its Article 231, seen as the symbol of the injustice and harshness of the whole document, festered within Germany. And as the years passed, full-blown hatred slowly settled into a smoldering resentment of the treaty and its authors, a resentment that would 2 decades later be counted to an arguable extent among the causes of the Second World War. And then on the 13th of May 1920, the Socialist Party nominates Eugene V. Debs as its candidate for president in the upcoming November elections. There's a slight complication, though. Debs is serving a 10-year sentence at a federal penitentiary in Atlanta and isn't due to get out until 1928. The Socialist Party nominating convict 2253 for president on today's date in 1920. His nomination marked the first instance in the history of the United States when the name of a person confined behind prison bars was presented to the people as a candidate for the chief magistrate of the nation. It was the fifth nomination for the 64-year-old Indiana-born labor leader who began his career as a railroad worker and made his first bid for the presidency in the year 1900. And in 1918, he had been convicted of violating the Espionage Act and the Sedition Act, controversial laws pushed through Congress by President Woodrow Wilson to silence critics of U.S. involvement in World War I. And despite his inability to hit the campaign trails, he won more than 900,000 votes in the 1920 election, his best showing to date. The victor commuted his sentence and cited his age and physical condition. And though now a free man, he never ran for president again and died in 1926. But it was the Socialist Party that nominated convict 2253 for president on today's date, the 13th of May in the year 1920. And on the same date in 1940, as Winston Churchill takes the helm as Great Britain's new Prime Minister, he assures Parliament that this new policy will consist of nothing less than to wage war by sea, land and air with all our might and with all the strength that God can give us, to wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalogue of human crime, emphasizing that Britain's aim was simply victory, victory at all costs, and victory in spite of terror, victory however long and hard the road may be. And that very evening he was informed that Britain would need 60 fighter squadrons to defend British soil against German attack. It had only 39. And within a couple of weeks, this conservative anti-socialist Churchill, in an effort to make his rally cry of victory a reality, proceeded to place all persons, their services and their property at the disposal of the Crown, thereby granting the government the most all-encompassing emergency powers in modern British history. Happened on today's date in 1940, as he took the helm as Great Britain's new Prime Minister, and announced that I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. During a goodwill trip through Latin America, Vice President Richard Nixon's car is attacked by an angry crowd and nearly overturned while traveling through Caracas in Venezuela. The incident was the dramatic highlight of a trip characterized by Latin American anger over some of America's Cold War policies. Happened on today's date in the year 1958. By that year, relations between the U.S. and Latin America had reached their lowest point in years. And Latin Americans complained that the U.S. focus on the Cold War and the anti-communism failed to address the pressing economic and political needs of many Latin American nations. The riot there served as a wake-up call to U.S. officials in Washington, alerting them to America's deteriorating relations with Latin America. And in the next few months, the U.S. increased both its military and economic assistance to the region. However, it was not until communist Fidel Castro's rise to power in Cuba in 1959 that the U.S. truly realized the extent of discontent in Latin America. But it started with the Vice President Nixon being attacked on today's date in 1958 in Caracas, Venezuela. And on the 13th of May 1973, during the early years of the women's liberation movement, tennis stars Bobby Riggs and Margaret Court face off in a $10,000 winner-take-all challenge match. The 55-year-old Riggs, a tennis champion from the late 30s and 40s who was notoriously skeptical of women's talents on the tennis court, branded the contest a battle of the sexes. And the match, which was played on Mother's Day and televised internationally, was held on Riggs' home turf, the San Vincent Country Club in Ramona, California, northeast of San Diego. Proceeds were promised to the American Diabetes Association, and Bobby Riggs had originally proposed a male-female matchup to Billie Jean King, whom he dubbed the leading women's liber of tennis. She ignored the offer, but Australian Margaret Court, who had won 89 of her last 92 matches and was the leading money winner on the women's professional tour, accepted it. Leading up to the match, he loudly and consistently belittled women's tennis and its players to the media while she, occupied with raising her 1-year-old son, said little. She was a serve and volley player known for a tough play at the net, and by contrast he was a baseliner, and it later became known that he had the court resurfaced to slow the game, giving him time to wind up and put more power into his stroke. The slow surface immediately put her at a disadvantage. He lobbed her shots back to her, breaking the rhythm she was accustomed to on the hard-hitting women's tour. Rattled, she lost the match, 6-2, 6-1. And the moment the match ended, he again challenged Billie Jean King. She accepted, and their $100,000 winner-take-all match, dubbed by some the Libber versus the Lobber, took place in 1973 in front of a sold-out Houston Astrodome crowd, and the 29-year-old Billie Jean King prevailed 6-4, 6-3, 6-3. At a news conference after the match, he explained the loss. She was too good, too fast. She returned all my passing shots and made great plays of them. I was trying to play my game, but I couldn't. After his death at the age of 77, he complimented her former rival and his probably accidental contribution to the advancement of gender equality. Our Battle of the Sexes match helped to advance the game of tennis and women everywhere, he said. It was the first Battle of the Sexes played on the 13th of May in 1973. Near the start of his weekly general audience in Rome's St. Peter's Square, Pope John Paul II is shot and seriously wounded while passing through the square in an open car on today's date in 1981. The assailant, a 23-year-old escaped Turkish murderer Mehmet Ali Akka, fired 4 shots, one of which hit the pontiff in the abdomen, narrowly missing vital organs, and another that hit the Pope's left hand. A third bullet struck 60-year-old American Ann Order in the chest, seriously wounding her, and the fourth hit 21-year-old Jamaican Rose Hill in the arm. His weapon was knocked out of his hand by bystanders, and he was detained until his arrest by police. The Pope was rushed by ambulance to Rome's Gemelli Hospital, where he underwent more than 5 hours of surgery and was listed in critical but stable condition. John Paul II, once the spiritual leader of almost 600 million Roman Catholics around the world, was invested in 1978 as the first Polish pope and the first non-Italian pope in 456 years. Fluent in 7 modern languages and Latin, he was known as an avid traveler who had little fear of going out in public, and 4 days after being shot, he offered forgiveness to his would-be assassin from his hospital bed and spent 3 weeks in the hospital before being released fully recovered from his wounds. It was this incident in which he was shot on the 13th of May, today's date, in the year 1981. He is remembered for his successful efforts to end communism, as well as for building bridges with people of other faiths and issuing the Catholic Church's first apology for its actions during World War II, and was succeeded by Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger, who became Pope Benedict XVI. Pope John Paul II was canonized in 2014, but he was shot in this incident, which he did recover, but it happened on the 13th of May in 1981. Ladies and gentlemen, these were some of the stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date, the 13th of May, and I do hope you enjoyed listening to them, particularly for all you history buffs. I'm going to end my show right here, wishing you all a lovely week and a beautiful Monday morning. It is the 13th of May, and for those of you who'd like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754.